Right now, somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, a cable the width of a garden hose is carrying this video to you. And if someone cuts it, you don't just lose Netflix. You lose hospitals, you lose stock markets, you lose emergency systems, banks, governments, militaries. You lose everything. And here's the terrifying part. It has already happened. Not once, not twice, dozens of times, and almost nobody noticed. Most people think the internet lives in the sky. Satellites, clouds, Wi-Fi signals bouncing off towers. That's what the name cloud computing wants you to believe. But it's a lie. A beautiful, convenient lie. The real internet? It lives underground and underwater. An inside room so cold you can see your breath. Let me take you back to 1858. A man named Cyrus Field had an insane idea. He wanted to lay a cable across the entire Atlantic Ocean, from Newfoundland, Canada, all the way to Ireland. People called him a lunatic. His first cable snapped. His second one snapped too. On the third try, it worked. Queen Victoria sent the first transatlantic message. It took 16 hours to transmit 98 words. 16 hours for 98 words. Today, a single cable like that can carry 200 terabits per second. That's the entire works of Shakespeare, transmitted in 1 millisecond. And right now, at this very moment, there are over 500 of those cables snaking across the ocean floor. They carry 99% of all international internet traffic. Not satellites, not towers, not Wi-Fi, cables. Cables made of glass. Fiber optic threads thinner than a human hair, bundled together inside a casing about as thick as your thumb. On land, they're buried maybe a meter underground. In shallow coastal waters, they're buried a bit deeper. But in the deep ocean, they just lie there, on the sea floor, in the dark, unguarded, unprotected, waiting. Now here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume that if one cable breaks, no big deal. There are backup routes, right? Redundancy, failover systems. The internet was designed to survive a nuclear attack. That's literally true, by the way. In 1960, the US military funded ARPANET, the grandfather of the modern internet. The whole point was that even if nuclear bombs destroyed part of the network, data could route around the damage like water around a rock. Beautiful design, brilliant engineering. But that was the 1960s. Here's what changed. The internet got enormous, and enormous things need enormous infrastructure. And enormous infrastructure has enormous choke points. Let me show you what I mean. Look at this map. See how all those cables bunch together at certain points? New York, London, Singapore, Mumbai, Alexandria. These are called cable landing stations. They're where the undersea cables come ashore and connect to the land-based network. Some cities have dozens of cables landing in the same spot, which means if something happens at that spot, every single one of those cables goes down. And here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. A lot of these stations are not exactly Fort Knox. Some are in industrial parks. Some are in buildings that don't even have security guards. One of the most important cable landing stations in all of Europe is in a small seaside town in southwest England. There's a pub down the road. Now here's the part they don't put in the history books. The internet has already died. Partially, regionally, quietly. And the pattern of how it died should terrify you. January 30th, 2008. 3 undersea cables in the Mediterranean Sea were cut within 48 hours of each other. Egypt lost 70% of its internet connectivity overnight. India lost 50 to 60%. Countries across the Middle East and South Asia went almost dark. Millions of people, billions of dollars in economic activity, just gone. The official story? Ships accidentally dragged their anchors across the cables. Multiple ships, multiple cables, multiple countries, within 48 hours of each other. Investigators found no ships in the area at the time of the first cuts. The cables just broke. Nobody was ever held responsible. Nobody fully explained it. And then it happened again. February 2013. Egyptian authorities arrested divers near a cable off the coast of Alexandria. The divers were actively cutting the cable with hacksaws, underwater, in the Mediterranean, like a James Bond villain. Except it was real. That cable, the See Me We 4 cable, connected Europe to Asia through the Middle East and South Asia. Used by hundreds of millions of people, cut with a hacksaw, by 3 men in diving gear. And then there was Taiwan, 2006. An earthquake off the southern coast of Taiwan snapped 7 undersea cables simultaneously. Suddenly, internet traffic across all of East and Southeast Asia came to a near standstill. Vietnam, the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, all of it slowed to a crawl overnight. It took 11 ships and 49 days to repair the damage. 49 days, entire economies were limping. And here's the thing that keeps security experts awake at night. That was an earthquake, an act of nature. What if it was intentional? This is where the story gets very dark and very real. In 2017, a report from the British military quietly warned that Russian submarines had been spotted near critical undersea cable routes in the North Atlantic. Not passing through, hovering, investigating, mapping. The British Chief of Defence Staff at the time, Air Chief Marshal Sir Stuart Peach, gave a public speech. He said, and I'm summarizing here, "There is a new and dangerous vulnerability in our society, and it is our undersea cables." He then said something extraordinary. He said Russia had the capability to cut those cables, and that if they did, the economic impact would be catastrophic. Not just economically, militarily. Because here's what most people don't realize. NATO's military communications run through commercial undersea cables too. Not just encrypted military satellites. Commercial cables. The same cables that carry your Netflix stream. If you cut the right cables at the right time, in the right sequence, you don't just take down the internet. You blind an entire military. You freeze financial markets. You cut off emergency communications. You create chaos before a single bullet is fired. And the really chilling part? You could do it with a submarine, quietly, in international waters, where no laws apply. Because technically, there's no law against a submarine getting close to a cable on the ocean floor. You can get close, you can surveil, you can map every millimeter of the route, and you just wait. But the undersea cables are only half the story. Because even if the cables survive, the internet still needs to breathe. Here's something almost nobody thinks about. A data center, the buildings where the internet actually lives, generates an almost incomprehensible amount of heat. A large data center can use as much electricity as a small city, and almost all of that electricity turns into heat. Heat is the enemy of computers. A processor running too hot will throttle, slow down, fail. If a data center loses its cooling, its ability to breathe, the servers start dying within minutes, not hours, minutes. And then your bank can't process transactions. Your hospital can't access patient records. Your government systems go offline. This is why some of the world's biggest data centers are built in strange places. Iceland, Norway, Sweden. Places where the outside air is naturally cold year-round. They literally pipe in Arctic air to cool the machines. Microsoft actually sank a data center underwater off the coast of Scotland. Project Natick, they called it. The idea was that the sea itself would act as a giant heat sink. Cool, quiet, and safe from human interference. Except, we've already established what can happen to things on the ocean floor. Think about that. And then there's the power problem. Data centers need massive, uninterrupted power. They have backup generators, battery systems, redundant feeds from the power grid. But every single one of those systems has a physical location, a physical switch, a physical cable, a physical point of failure. In 2021, a single fiber cut in the United States caused a massive outage that took down large parts of major internet providers for hours. Not a cyber attack, not a missile, a fiber cut, probably a construction crew, probably an accident. Which raises a horrifying question. If an accident can do that, what can a determined adversary do? Now, I promised you a twist. Here it is. There is a small group of people, 14 of them, scattered across the world, who hold physical keys to the internet. Not a metaphor, physical keys, made of metal. In 2010, ICANN, the organization that manages the internet's address system, created something called the root zone key signing key. Think of it as the master lock for the entire domain name system. Every single website address in the world, every .com, every .org, every .gov, ultimately traces back to this key. If the key is compromised, the entire address system could be poisoned. Fake websites could replace real ones. Banks, governments, hospitals, all of them could be spoofed. So to protect it, ICANN devised an elaborate ceremony. 7 primary key holders were chosen from around the world. 7 backup holders, 14 people total. When the ceremony happens, which it does periodically, in a high-security facility in Los Angeles, all the key holders must be present. They unlock safes, they use smart cards, they enter codes. There are cameras everywhere, armed security, hardware security modules that have never been connected to the internet. It looks like a scene from a heist movie, because in a very real sense, it is. These 14 people are the last physical line of defense for the internet's addressing system. And here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this. Every single one of them is a regular human being, with a home address, with a family, with a morning commute. So let's put this all together. The internet, the thing that runs your bank, your hospital, your government, your military, your food supply chain, your stock market, your emergency services, is kept alive by cables thinner than your thumb, lying unguarded on the ocean floor. Buildings that need constant power and constant cooling, with physical addresses and physical vulnerabilities. 14 human beings holding metal keys, and a worldwide electrical grid that has already been hacked. In 2015, Russian hackers took down the power grid in parts of Ukraine. Not a theory, not a movie plot. It happened. Homes went dark in winter. In 2021, the Colonial Pipeline, a critical piece of American fuel infrastructure, was held hostage by ransomware. Gas stations ran dry up and down the East Coast. People panicked. And yet, we keep adding more of our lives to this system. Our medical records, our money, our identities, our memories. Every photo you've ever taken, every message you've ever sent, every secret you've ever kept in a notes app. All of it, somewhere in a building that needs oxygen, cold air and electricity to stay alive. Here is the real question. Not, could this happen? It already has. Partially, quietly, repeatedly. The real question is, what do you do the morning it happens completely? When you wake up and your phone shows no signal, your bank app won't load, the ATM doesn't work, the traffic lights are out, the hospital's record system is black, and nobody can tell you when it's coming back. Because somewhere on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, in the cold, dark silence, a cable is lying there. Right now. While you watch this, while you sleep, while the world carries on, assuming everything is fine, and maybe it is. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe the systems hold. Maybe the redundancies work. Maybe the 14 key holders are safe tonight. Or maybe the cursor just stops blinking. The internet is the most important infrastructure humanity has ever built. And almost none of us know how fragile it really is. If this video made you think differently about something you use every day, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into the systems that quietly run our world. And drop a comment. What would you do on day 1 if the internet went down for good? I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.